My name's Charlie Baker. I'm an artist and builder, and I create mostly by weaving materials found in nature. A lot of what I create, I strive to make it look as though it could have grown that way, combining natural materials in the most organic way possible. She's out of frame there, or she's in the frame?
There she is. Let's see where she goes.
She's going under the wood rack. You won't see her for a while. Where were we again?
Your favorite aspect of the process? Like
Oh yeah. At first I just really enjoyed the process of foraging, taking beach walks or walking through the woods and recognizing certain shapes that spoke to me, and it wasn't until I started playing with some of these materials that I realized I was good at it and it was something I wanted to keep doing. With some projects, you start with a drawing and you find the materials later. Sometimes the design process just starts with playing with the material you know you want to use and seeing how it fits together, and the overall form kind of takes shape just from a little experimenting. Sometimes the material selection has to serve various purposes, both an aesthetic purpose. If it's a piece that's going to be outside and needs to be rot resistant, there are certain species that are going to last longer. And sometimes you have the freedom to just pick a material based on the aesthetic, based on what shapes or colors or textures are appealing to you. I tend to gravitate towards twistier, more curvy shapes. I feel like when they're put together, they create a sense of motion in the final piece. There are certainly days where things are falling into place and you find that rhythm, and it's very enjoyable when you cut a piece or bend a piece just right and it fits right in there. It can be very easy and enjoyable and exciting, but there are certainly days where you feel like you're fighting a little bit. Sometimes you just need to take a break from the material or the project, because it can be a very tedious process, and if you're not enjoying it, sometimes it can translate into the final project. So okay, I would say my most exciting part of the process is when I reach that tipping point where you can just sort of see that your original vision is coming to life. It's hard not to just sort of stop and admire it, even though it's not quite done. My largest piece I've created was a series of human-sized bird nests that were roughly 10 to 12 feet diameter, and there were 3 of them total connected with bridges. My favorite work memory would be working on the nests and feeling like I was part of a community of nesters, because I was surrounded by just a deafening chorus of birds doing their work while I was working in this grove of trees. One of the pieces I'm most proud of was a 8-foot diameter globe I made out of mountain laurel twigs. It's a series I want to create over time of geometric shapes done with natural materials. Currently working on a pyramid version, slightly smaller. The 8-foot diameter ball was very ambitious. This time I'm going to go a little smaller with the pyramid shape. So I use laurel a lot when I'm selecting branch material. It's not a branch, it's a shrub that grows in the understory, but it has a very twiggy appearance to it. Laurel is typically found in kind of specific places where it likes the acidity of the soil, and it likes the species of trees, and it's kind of hard to find those spots that it likes and is growing abundantly. Of course, my exact spots I keep top secret, but this batch came from out in eastern Long Island. So here we are in a spot that I found a few years ago in an area of Long Island where mountain laurel happens to grow quite abundantly. Mountain laurel has a natural resistance to rot and bugs. I've always been drawn to this look of the bark and the way it grows. It grows very twisty, wavy, seeking out the light in a dense wooded areas where it generally grows. But it's the best rot resistance that I know of in a sort of branchy looking material, which makes it great for this project. Generally look for ones that are mostly dead. As you can see, this one has hardly any greenery on it, but we know it's not quite dead and starting to rot because it has just a little greenery left. And that's one that'll probably eventually die, but I'm gonna get some good use out of it instead of letting it rot here in the woods. And that's that. So when I head out into the woods, I don't really generally need much in the way of tools. I have my loppers, These will allow me to cut pretty big material quickly and easily. They also function as a spiderweb stopper. I hold them a few inches in front of my face because nobody likes a solid mouthful of spiderweb. I have my smaller hand pruners to trim off greenery or smaller diameter branches. And for bigger diameter material, or if it's hard to reach inside with the loppers, I have an arborist handsaw that I bring.
Why is it that shape?
I don't know why it would be that shape, to be honest. But every tree saw I've ever seen has got a curve to it, so. As a general rule, I almost never take things that are a thriving, healthy species. I like to take things that are abundant and not in any way going to harm the area where I took them from. So you have a lot of criteria that needs to be filled when you're selecting a material. Luna, come on. There you go. This is my helpful assistant, Luna. Before a piece is done, she needs to do one last quality check and make sure everything's well screwed in and, tip top. Sometimes helpful, sometimes not so helpful. This is so far about 2 to 3 days, including the frame. With the globe shape, the mountain laurel that I was weaving together kind of just kept going as a continuous circle, almost a repeat of many circles in different diameters. The challenge now is to try it where you have to actually turn a corner. It'll be kind of an experiment on how the material will come together when we turn the sharp edge. At the bottom, I'm trying to make it look as natural as possible, almost like root flare of a tree when the tree meets the ground. And at the top, it's going to be another challenge of the puzzle piecing of all 3 sides coming together and trying to make it as a perfect spire as possible. Really only the first layer of branches are actually attached to the frame, and then most of them are either just tucked into each other or screwed from one piece to another. As I'm assembling it, I'm using very curvy pieces, but I like the way they kind of naturally move around each other, almost as like a braided rope or a basket, and I try to picture how they want to be married to one another. So it's been sort of an experiment and learn as you go to see how the form is kind of taking its own shape. As my experience as a woodworker, there's definitely some engineering that comes into play with some of the pieces I create. They can't just look pretty, they have to be sturdy. For example, the walls of the nest have to serve as a safety barrier because the nests are raised. So most of the puzzle pieced twig creations are fastened with thousands of screws. Also, always keeping in mind that where the screw isn't going to exit in a place where it's going to be visible, which is sometimes tricky. And when you're holding the piece in with one hand and having to start the screw, it's always fun. Sometimes it would be nice to have 3 hands. I would say my most used tool when I'm doing the puzzle piecing of twigs is the bandsaw. It just allows for intricate curvy cuts or shaving little bits to get that fit just right. Sometimes it just sort of slots its way in and you know that's where it's going. Even if it wasn't where you originally wanted to fill, it just found a home and you knew it wanted to be there. The hardest part of finishing it off and filling the last bit of voids can sometimes be the most time consuming because you're finding you have one destination for it to go and you want to find that perfect piece to fit in that spot. Whereas when you still have multiple holes, then you can kind of shop around for where it seems to be want to go. I would like to think that when people see my pieces, it gives them that feeling that you get when you're out in nature, and combining that with craftsmanship that I hope inspires people by the care and the work that went into it, that's recognized, but also has a look to it that maybe nature could have created it and it could have grown that way. A combination of craftsmanship and what you'd naturally find out in nature. So. I obviously have an intense appreciation for the already sculptural pieces that nature creates on its own, and in a way I just feel like I'm borrowing and combining things that are already there, because I think nobody can create these shapes better than Mother Nature.